I stood in the corner of the party room, soft Christmas music playing in the background. And in that moment I saw her, my wife, slip into the office with her boss. Through the crack in the door, I saw their lips pressed together, their hands, crossing every line. My throat went dry, my fingers clenched around the beer bottle until I heard it creak. Rachel, my wife of 10 years. Ethan Blake, her boss. And me, Ben Carter, 36, a carpenter in Bozeman, Montana. Father to Sophie, our 8-year-old daughter, home right now with the sitter. I didn't burst in, didn't yell, I just stood there. And I knew. From this moment on, either I disappear, or I make them disappear. If you've ever been betrayed, and still chose to stand tall, not with rage, but with your bare hands and what's left of your name, stay with me, because I'm going to tell you how I rebuilt everything. From the ashes of the life they tried to burn down. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to the woman I once called my home, and felt like a stranger in my own bed. Her breathing was soft, steady, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't torn a decade of trust in half behind a closed office door. I stared at the ceiling in silence, counting cracks in the drywall, not hours, no shouting, no drama, just something inside me, breaking slow and quiet. By 5 a.m., I was already in the workshop, my sanctuary, a detached garage behind the house I turned into a woodshop back when dreams still meant something. The scent of sawdust hit me like truth, bitter, honest, grounding. I opened my sketch pad, not for clients, not for money, but for myself. Clean lines, strong beams, a foundation, something I no longer had. I didn't know yet what I was building. All I knew was, it had to start here, with my hands, and with a silence loud enough to fill the spaces where love used to live. That morning, I didn't need revenge. I needed direction, and I picked up a pencil instead of a hammer. For now, I was tracing the frame of a window on the sketch pad when I heard it. A small yawn, bare feet on cold concrete. "Daddy?" I looked up. There she was, Sophie, standing in the doorway of the workshop, hair in messy pigtails, clutching the sleeve of her pajama shirt. She looked so much like her mother it hurt. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, softening. "What are you doing up so early?" She shrugged. "I heard you. What are you making?" I paused, looking down at the pencil in my hand. "Just some ideas I've been thinking about." She didn't ask what kind, didn't question the darkness behind my eyes. She just stepped forward and grabbed the little apron I'd stitched for her last Christmas, the one with her name embroidered in green thread. "Can I help?" My throat tightened. I lifted her onto the workbench and smiled. "Always." And there we were, father and daughter, sanding wood in the quiet morning light. She didn't know it, but she wasn't just helping me build a frame. She was helping me hold it together. For 10 whole minutes, I forgot about Rachel, about Ethan. All I saw was Sophie, focused, steady, safe, and I knew she was my reason to rebuild. An hour passed. Sophie was sanding a small panel, her tongue sticking out in concentration like a tiny craftsman. I almost forgot Rachel existed. Then, footsteps. Soft, familiar, measured, like she didn't want to interrupt, but didn't belong there either. Rachel stood in the doorway holding a mug of coffee. She was wearing that gray robe she always wore on Sundays. But this time, it felt off, like a costume, like she was pretending to still belong in this space. "There you two are," she said, smiling tight. "Sophie, breakfast is ready." "5 more minutes, Mom," Sophie replied, still sanding. Rachel sighed. "Ben, she's getting sawdust all over her pajamas." "She's fine," I said, eyes on the wood. "We're bonding." "We can bond over pancakes. We're meeting my parents at 11, remember?" I had forgotten. Sunday brunch with her father, the man who looked at me like I came in with the mud. "Go ahead," I said. "Tell them I've got an emergency job." Rachel's smile faded. "On a Sunday? What job?" I didn't blink. "The Clarksons. You know how important that project is." She flinched, just barely, but I saw it. And in that tiny crack, I saw the whole mask start to slip. Rachel stood still for a second longer, coffee steaming in her hand, waiting for me to backpedal, to fold like I used to. I didn't. "Fine," she muttered, turning to Sophie. "Come on, honey, let's get cleaned up." "Do I have to?" Sophie pouted, holding her tiny sanding block like it was sacred. "Yes," Rachel said, sharper than needed. She's helping me, I said quietly, finally looking up. If she wants to stay, she stays. Rachel's jaw tightened. We're going to be late. Then go. The words burned behind my teeth, but I didn't say them. Instead, I watched as she reached for Sophie's hand. Their footsteps echoed down the driveway. No kiss goodbye, not even a glance back. When the door closed, I stood there, not angry, not broken, just clear. I wiped my hands, picked up my phone, and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. "Brad Coleman," came the voice. "Bozeman Community Bank." "Brad," I said. "It's Ben Carter." "Ben? Been a while, man. What's up?" "I need to talk business." "On a Sunday? This serious?" "Dead serious. Because now, this wasn't just about hurt feelings. This was about taking back control. One brick, $1, one move at a time. The next morning I met Tom Weaver, an old real estate contact just outside town. We stood in front of a wreck, two-story ranch, boarded windows, porch sagging like it had given up long ago, paint peeling, gutters hanging loose. A forgotten house on the edge of Bozeman that looked like hope had packed up and left years ago. "You sure about this, Ben?" Tom asked, brushing frost off the warped handrail. "This place needs everything." "That's exactly why I want it," I said. He gave me a look, half curiosity, half concern. "You planning to flip it?" "Eventually." I paused. "But that's not why I'm here." I stepped through the busted doorway. The inside smelled like rot and plaster. The floor creaked under my boots, but the bones were there. Old pine beams, hand-carved trims still visible beneath layers of grime. A house that had been neglected, not broken. "People see disaster," I said. "I see structure." Tom nodded slowly. "Well, the bank's practically giving it away. No one wants the headache." "Good," I said. "I don't want anyone near it." By noon, the paperwork was in motion, and that night, as I sat in my truck outside the house, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Steady. That night, I got home late. Sophie was already asleep. Rachel stood in the kitchen, wine glass in hand, swirling it like it held answers. "You bought a house?" she asked, voice too calm to be casual. I didn't look up from my coffee. "Yeah." She took a step forward. "You bought another house, without telling me?" "It's an investment," I said. She laughed once, sharp, joyless. "We can barely handle this mortgage, Ben." "I'll manage." "With what time? You're already working 60 hours a week." "I'll figure it out." Her voice rose. "So now it's about you? Your project, your money, your secret?" I set the mug down. My voice didn't waver. "Kind of like your Henderson project?" She froze, just for a beat, but it was enough. "You don't get to twist this," she snapped. "I'm trying to build a career while you're still hammering fences for a living." That one should have hurt, but I'd already bled out. "If that's how you see me," I said, eyes steady, "then maybe you never really knew me at all." She stormed out of the room. I stayed where I was. I didn't chase, didn't explain. I just reached for the drawer labeled Riverside and started digging. The drawer groaned open like it had a secret. Inside, manila folders, thick with invoices, permits, contracts, everything Rachel brought home from Blake and Company like it was harmless paperwork. I started flipping, slow, careful, no rush, no panic, just precision. 2 documents caught my eye. Same project, same date, but 2 different invoices. One for the client, one for the supplier. The first said premium roofing. The second, budget asphalt. Different price, different materials, same signature, Rachel's. My chest didn't tighten. My pulse didn't race. Just a cold focus settling in, like a builder measuring before a cut. I grabbed my phone, took photos, saved them, put everything back the way it was. Then I scrolled down to a name I hadn't dialed in 7 years. James Langley, State Attorney General's office. The line clicked. "Langley," he answered. "Who's this?" "Ben Carter," I said. A pause, then a low whistle. "Well, damn, been a long time." "Too long," I said. "But I've got something you'll want to hear." "You in trouble?" "No," I said. "But I think Ethan Blake might be." Another pause. Then he said the words that changed everything. "I'm listening." I told James everything. Not just what I saw, but what I'd found. Invoices, signatures, material swaps. The kind of fraud that didn't happen by accident. He went quiet for a long time. Then, "You're not the first person to mention Blake and Company," he said. That caught me off guard. What do you mean? We've had complaints, whispers, nothing solid. Ethan's smart, keeps his hands clean, knows the right people in the right offices. I leaned back in my chair. So what if someone had more than whispers, real files, dated, cross-referenced, names attached? Then maybe, James said slowly, someone could finally crack this wide open. Hypothetically, I added. He chuckled, but his voice dropped a notch. Ben, if you're serious, don't go to the local PD. Don't go to anyone inside the county. Bring it straight to me. You understand? I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. I understand. And Ben, he added, voice colder now, if Blake gets even a whiff of this, he won't come at you through lawyers. I didn't blink. Then I won't come at him with emotion. James paused. I mean it. Watch your back. I am, I said. Better than I ever have. I didn't sleep that night. Again. Not from anger. Not even grief. Just calculation. At sunrise, I started making calls. Careful ones. Old subcontractors. Guys I'd worked with years back. Framers, drywallers, roofers. Some had walked away from Blake and company quietly. Others were pushed out. When I brought up Ethan Blake's name, most of them went silent. Like I'd said something filthy. Ben, one guy muttered, don't drag me into that. I've got 2 kids. Another just hung up. I didn't blame them. Fear runs deep when a man like Blake controls city contracts and county inspectors. But then, a name lit up my phone. Nate Ruiz, a framing contractor I hadn't seen since a winter job in 18. I kept stuff, he said without hello, invoices, emails, just in case. He sent the first batch that night. PDFs, time-stamped, signed, and wrong in all the same ways. 2 sets of bids, 2 sets of material receipts, 1 obvious scam. 1 name kept showing up at the bottom of the permits, Raymond Tucker, the inspector. It wasn't just sloppy accounting, it was systemic fraud. And Rachel? Her initials were on half the orders. That night I started 2 files, 1 for Ethan, 1 for her. From that point on, my days split in 2. Sunlight hours? I worked. Decks, cabinets, kitchen installs, small jobs that paid the bills and kept up appearances. I smiled when I had to, nodded through client questions. No one saw the fire under my skin, but when the sun dropped behind the mountains, I drove straight to the ranch house. No music, no podcasts, just the sound of gravel under tires and sawdust in my lungs. The place was still a mess, peeling walls, rotten floorboards, frozen pipes that shrieked when touched. But to me, it was peace. It was mine. While I ripped drywall from moldy studs, I replayed every word Rachel said about late meetings, every invoice she brought home and dropped on the counter like it meant nothing. I kept a notebook in my tool belt, names, dates, material codes. Every pattern I could see, I wrote down like a carpenter measuring twice before cutting once. I wasn't just rebuilding a house, I was building a case, and every nail I drove into the ranch frame felt like a nail into the coffin of the lie they'd spent years perfecting. I didn't need revenge. I needed clarity, and I was getting closer. By then, Rachel and I barely spoke. We still lived in the same house, still used the same kitchen, still folded Sophie's laundry and signed school forms like 2 strangers playing house. But every interaction was surface level. Groceries, bills. What time's pickup? Did you feed the dog? We didn't fight. Fighting takes energy. We had none left for each other. Then one Thursday night, I walked in to see her zipping up a small suitcase in the bedroom. There's a conference in Billings, she said, avoiding eye contact. 3 days. Ethan says it's important for the Henderson project. She said his name like it was just another colleague, like I hadn't watched her body fall into his arms behind a cracked office door. I didn't ask who else was going. Didn't ask what hotel. Didn't ask anything. I just said, I'm sure it is. Her hand paused on the zipper. What's that supposed to mean? Exactly what I said. Then, without looking up from my notes, send Ethan my regards. She flinched, small, but real. I don't know what's gotten into you lately, she muttered. I almost smiled. Probably the same thing, I said. That got into you. She left 10 minutes later. No kiss, no questions. Just the sound of her heels fading down the hallway like a door slamming in slow motion. Sophie was asleep at a friend's that night. I had the house to myself, no TV, no music. Just the soft hum of the fridge and the ticking clock in the hallway. I walked into the office, opened the bottom drawer, pulled out the folder marked Riverside Project, the one Rachel had brought home like it was just another busy week at work. I started flipping pages, slow, patient, like I was dismantling a bomb. One permit stood out, same job code, two completely different material orders, approved by the same inspector, Raymond Tucker. Again, my fingers tapped the table. It was bigger than I thought. Not just Ethan, not just Rachel, but a whole system built on silence and fake signatures. And I had no intention of staying silent. I grabbed my phone and scrolled to a contact I never thought I'd need. A drywall guy from years back. One who used to drink with Raymond Tucker on Friday nights. I hit call. Hello? Hey, I need a number. Tucker's. A pause. Then, I hope you know what you're doing. It didn't take long. The drywall guy texted me Raymond Tucker's personal number, followed by, "Careful, he spooks easy." I waited until just after 9 p.m., the kind of hour where people let their guard down, thinking the day's done. The line rang twice. "This is Tucker." "Mr. Tucker," I said, voice calm. "My name's Ben Carter. I'm a contractor here in Bozeman." Long pause. "Don't think I know you." "No reason you should," I said. "But I know your name. It shows up on every permit tied to Blake and Company, even the ones where materials don't match the orders." Another pause. This one longer. "I don't know what you're implying," he said sharply. "I'm not implying. I'm stating. And I've got copies. In multiple places." His voice dropped. "Is this a threat?" "No. I don't want your money. I want the truth." I'm hanging up. "Before you do," I cut in, "you should know something. If anything happens to me, those files go straight to the state attorney general's office. Not the local guys, not your buddies, the state." Silence. Then a different tone. "Bennett's Diner, tomorrow, 7 a.m. come alone." I was planning to. Bennett's Diner was half empty at 7 a.m. The kind of place where the coffee's burnt, the eggs are cheap, and no one asks questions. Raymond Tucker sat in the corner booth, hunched over a chipped mug. He looked older than I expected. Late 50s. Gray creeping into his stubble. Eyes like someone who hadn't slept in weeks, and didn't deserve to. I slid into the booth across from him, said nothing. He didn't look up. "I've been doing this too long," he muttered, fingers curled around the mug. 15 years of cutting corners. It started small, rushed approvals, skipped steps, but with Blake, it got worse. I let the silence stretch. Falsified permits, safety reports that never happened, premiums charged, budget stuff installed, every damn project. His voice cracked. "And your wife? Rachel, right?" I didn't move. "She handled the paperwork, didn't she?" I nodded once. "Then she knew," he said. "Maybe not all of it, but enough." I felt the weight settle. Not rage, not betrayal, just confirmation that the life I thought I had was never really there. Tucker slid a small thumb drive across the table. "Names, dates, projects, it's all on here. You willing to testify?" He shook his head. "Not yet. But if this thing burns, I want to be on the right side of the fire." I drove back from the diner with the thumb drive in my coat pocket. Didn't stop for coffee, didn't turn on the radio. Just let the tires hum beneath me and the truth echo in my head. Rachel knew, maybe not everything, but enough to step away. And instead, she stepped further in. I pulled up outside the ranch house. Sat there for almost an hour, gripping the steering wheel until my fingers cramped. The house stood silent, weathered, ugly, but solid, just like the plan forming in my chest. I took the thumb drive inside, booted up my laptop, backed up every file, 3 times. Then I opened my notebook and flipped to a clean page. I didn't write down how I felt. That didn't matter anymore. What mattered were patterns, names, invoices, dates. Every misstep Ethan Blake ever made, buried in paperwork he thought no one would check. This wasn't about Rachel anymore, not even about Ethan. It was about everything rotting beneath the surface, in this town, in me. And if I was going to burn it all down, I wasn't using fire. I was going to use the truth, measured, sharp, and nailed into place. That week, I worked like a man with something to lose. By day, I finished client jobs like nothing had changed. Tile work, baseboards, a custom pantry for a retired couple. Smiles, handshakes, small talk. By night, I stripped the ranch house to its bones. I tore out rotten subfloor with my bare hands, reframed a crooked doorway, hung drywall by flashlight when the power cut out. I slept on a cot in the back room, woke up sore, but clear. Every muscle ache was proof I was still standing, still building. Then I made more calls, quiet ones, guys I used to know on job sites, subs who'd left Blake and company without a word. Most gave me nothing but silence. One said, "Ben, it's not worth the trouble. He's untouchable." But a few, just a few, paused, and then asked, "You got proof?" "Yes." "You serious?" "Dead." That night, Nate sent over more files, estimates, permit logs, even inspection sign-offs that looked identical. Same dates, same words. Same signature, Raymond Tucker, again and again. This wasn't a crack. It was a system. They'd gotten away with it for years. And I was done pretending not to see it. By now, I was building two things at once, a house and a case. Every beam I sanded, every nail I drove into the frame of that ranch was mirrored by files copied, names underlined, invoices compared line by line. The rhythm kept me sane. Hammer, screenshot, tape measure, testimony, no emotion, just structure. Like building a cabinet, each piece cut to fit, no room for guesswork. And the ranch house? It started coming alive. I replaced cracked windows, laid new flooring with my own two hands. Sophie came by one Saturday, painted a corner of the living room with her tiny roller and said, "It looks like a castle no one lives in yet." She wasn't wrong, but each day it looked a little less like wreckage, and a little more like a future. At home, Rachel had stopped pretending. She came and went. Late hours, no explanations. I didn't ask. She didn't offer. And that silence? It no longer felt like punishment. It felt like distance I could finally breathe inside. While she buried herself in lies, I kept building, because something honest, even when it's slow, even when it hurts, will always outlast something built on shortcuts. It was a Thursday evening when Rachel appeared in the doorway of the ranch. I was installing crown molding in the upstairs hallway, tape measure on my belt, sawdust on my jeans. Sunlight poured through the newly framed windows, casting soft gold across clean drywall. She didn't knock, just walked in, wearing heels that didn't belong on old pine floors and a blazer too polished for this place. "This is where you've been disappearing to," she said, her voice light but hollow. I had to ask around town to even find it. I didn't stop working, didn't offer her a tour. She stepped farther in, trailing her fingers along the banister I'd spent 2 nights carving by hand. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. "I forgot how talented you are." I didn't look at her. "Why are you here, Rachel?" She hesitated. Then, "Ethan proposed." I set the level down gently. "Congratulations." She blinked. "I haven't said yes." I finally turned to her, calm, clear. "That's between you and Ethan." A flicker crossed her face, regret or strategy I couldn't tell. "I just thought, maybe we could talk." "We are," I said. "But not as us." Her silence said the rest. She didn't belong here anymore. She stood there in the hallway, looking around like she could still lay claim to something. "This could have been ours," Rachel said, voice softer now. "If things had been different." I didn't move. "It's not ours," I replied. "It's mine." She took a step closer. "We were together for 10 years, Ben." "We were," I nodded. "And then you stepped into an office and ended it." Her jaw tightened. "I made a mistake." "No," I said, shaking my head. "A mistake is missing an exit. What you did was a decision. Repeated, calculated, covered up." She looked like she wanted to fight, but I didn't give her the space. "You didn't just cheat on me," I said. "You sided with a man who's been stealing from this town for years. You helped him do it." Her voice cracked. "I didn't know. You knew enough to look away." She stood in silence, blinking hard. "I'm not your enemy, Ben." "No," I said steady. "You're just not my wife anymore." She didn't speak after that, just turned and walked out. No goodbye, no slam of the door. And I didn't watch her leave. Because this house wasn't a grave. It was a beginning, and she was no longer part of it. The silence after Rachel left wasn't empty, it was clean. For the first time in months, the air in the ranch house felt breathable. No perfume, no lies, no weight dragging at the corners of the room. I walked back into the office, still unfinished, bare studs, one crooked outlet I hadn't rewired yet. Sat at the makeshift desk, pulled out my files. Everything was there. Signed permits, double-billed invoices, matching names, a trail of fraud so obvious it was insulting they thought no one would notice. But something was still missing. A link. The piece that connected the shady paperwork to the system that allowed it. Then I saw it. The same name stamped across every single permit. Raymond Tucker. Every falsified inspection. Every cut corner. Every approval on substandard builds. They all ran through him. He wasn't just complicit. He was the gatekeeper, and that made him the most dangerous piece on the board. I grabbed my phone and called him. He picked up on the second ring. "Tucker." "It's Carter," I said. "We need to meet again." He sighed, long, heavy. "I already gave you the drive." "No," I said. "You gave me breadcrumbs. Now I need the map." Silence. Then, "Tomorrow, same place, early." Bennett's Diner. 6:57 a.m. Tucker was already there. Same booth, same black coffee, half full. But this time, he didn't look like a man hiding. He looked like a man who'd stopped pretending he wasn't drowning. I slid into the booth. No small talk. He reached under the table and pulled out a worn spiral notebook, edges curled, pages bloated with clippings, copies, notes in block handwriting. "I've been doing this for 15 years, he said. "Not just for Blake. He's the worst, yeah. But there were others." He flipped through the pages, voice low but steady. Faked inspections, rubber-stamped safety reports, material swaps. It started with pressure, deadlines. Then it became routine. Easier to say yes than risk losing everything. He looked up. "I got a grandson now. They just bought a house, built by Blake and Company." His eyes met mine. "And every time I visit, I wonder what's behind those walls. What'll fail when they're asleep?" I didn't interrupt. Didn't need to. He slid the notebook toward me. "You want names? You've got them. Timelines, materials, signatures. You willing to testify?" He shook his head slowly. "Not yet. But if this collapses, I don't want to be standing in the rubble with Blake." I left the diner with the notebook in my passenger seat and the thumb drive in my coat pocket. Didn't go home. Didn't go to the ranch. I drove to a quiet parking lot behind the county courthouse. No security cameras, no foot traffic. Sat there for a while. Engine off, hands still. Just staring at the cover of that notebook. It wasn't just evidence. It was every cut corner, every covered-up risk, every lie passed off as paperwork. And suddenly, it felt heavy. Because once I handed this over, there was no going back. No undoing it. No hiding behind sawdust and drywall. I picked up my phone and dialed James Langley. "Talk to me," he said. "I've got everything. Names, dates, project codes, inspector logs. It's all mapped out. And a statement, indirect for now, from Tucker." There was a pause. Then James said, "Where?" "Neutral ground. No courthouse, no digital trail." We met 2 hours later, a rented office near the edge of town. I handed him the files, the drive, and the notebook. He flipped through a few pages, jaw tightening. "This is cleaner than half the audits we run internally." I didn't smile, because this wasn't a win. It was a reckoning. 4 days later, I pulled up to the ranch just after dawn. Coffee in one hand, toolbox in the other. Something felt off. The front door was open, not unlocked, busted. The frame I'd rebuilt last week, splintered. The trim I'd hand-carved, shattered on the floor. I stepped inside slowly. It wasn't a robbery. They didn't take tools, didn't care about copper or wiring or resale. They smashed everything that could be broken. Cabinets torn from walls, drywall kicked in, paint poured across the floors like blood. My cot in the back room slashed down the middle. A message. They knew. Not just about the files. About me. I stood in the center of the wreckage, glass crunching under my boots. And for a second, I expected to feel rage, but all I felt was clarity. This wasn't about a house anymore. This was about fear. Theirs. Because when a man builds something real, quietly, brick by brick, those who live on lies always try to break it. I filed a police report. Then I called James. "They know," I said. His voice was calm. "They're pushing back." "So am I," I replied. And that afternoon I made 2 more calls, to 2 off-duty deputies who owed me. By sunset, the ranch had eyes. Motion sensors, trail cams, new locks on every door, reinforced frames, bolts sunk deep into studs I'd measured twice, and parked out front, a beat-up Dodge with a badge on the dash. Deputy Marvin Walsh, retired but still sharp, sat with his thermos and paperback, keeping watch. "I'm not here to fight," he said. "I'm here to make sure no one gets away with sneaking in again." The next shift was Luis Grant, younger, quieter, ex-military. Didn't talk much, but when he shook my hand, it was with purpose. "You're not the only one Blake's threatened," he muttered. "Consider this my way of pushing back." I paid them out of pocket. Didn't blink at the cost. Because this house? It wasn't just walls and wood anymore. It was a line in the sand. And apparently, I wasn't the only one ready to defend it. Word spread fast in Bozeman, not through news, through tool belts and coffee shop whispers. By the next day, Nick dropped off extra plywood. Liam swung by with replacement fixtures. No one asked for details. They didn't need to. Sometimes, in small towns, you don't need to yell for help. You just need to show up. And they did. We started at sunrise. No speeches, no handshakes. Just boots on old floorboards and the creak of tape measures snapping open. Liam took the lead on electrical. Nick grabbed a sledge and cleared out the debris like it was personal. I focused on the framing. Cut clean. Nailed tight. Measured every stud twice, not just because it had to be right, but because this time, nothing would be hollow. By noon, the broken drywall was gone. By dusk, new beams were in place, stronger than the ones before. We worked in silence mostly, but not the awkward kind. The kind of silence that says, "I've got you. I know. Let's keep going." After dark, we sat on overturned buckets in what used to be the living room, shared beers, passed around tired laughs. Liam looked at the room and said, "Blake thought trashing this would stop you." I smirked. He didn't break anything worth keeping. The walls around us weren't finished yet, bare, exposed, but for the first time they felt true. No secrets behind them, no rot, no lies, just work, and the kind of loyalty you don't buy, you build. It was past midnight when the last truck pulled out. Only Liam stayed behind. We sat on the porch, 2 paint-smeared buckets, 1 flashlight between us, and a pair of warm beers that tasted better than they should have. For a while we didn't speak. Just let the night breathe around us. Then, without looking at me, he asked, "You good, man? I mean, really?" I didn't answer right away. Just looked down at my hands, calloused, raw, nicked from a dozen tiny mistakes. Then I told him everything. What I saw at the Christmas party, Rachel, Ethan, the lies buried in invoices, the files, the permits, Tucker, all of it. I didn't cry, didn't whisper, just said it straight like cutting a board clean down the middle. When I finished, Liam leaned back and let out a low whistle. "That son of a bitch." Then he looked over. "Want me to help you break his jaw?" I laughed, my first real laugh in weeks. "Tempting," I said, "but I've got something better." He raised an eyebrow. "Yeah? What's that?" I took a sip of beer, looked at the house behind us. "Living well," I said, "and maybe a little justice on the side." After that night, I stopped waiting for Rachel to change, waiting for Ethan to trip, waiting for someone else to care. I started reaching out, quietly, carefully. Former subcontractors, site managers, inspectors who'd been pushed aside or bought off. Some hung up before I even finished the first sentence. But others? They'd been waiting for someone like me. One guy said, "You've got the guts, I've got the inbox." Another sent over photos, job site memos, doctored invoices, inspection approvals with forged timestamps. It was all the same pattern. One man at the center, Ethan Blake. He didn't do the dirty work. He paid others to. Used charm, intimidation, and, most of all, paperwork. Paper never yelled, it just piled up until someone bothered to read it. And I read everything. I organized it by job site, by year, by the people who signed off. I color-coded violations. Mapped a timeline of fraud that stretched back almost a decade. Every night I added more. And every nail I drove into that ranch house felt like a nail in Ethan's empire. I wasn't just building a case anymore. I was building a reckoning. By March, the ranch house didn't look abandoned anymore. Fresh drywall covered the bruises left by fists and boots. New wiring hummed quietly behind the walls. The front porch, once sagging and warped, now stood level and proud. Neighbors started slowing their cars when they drove past. Some even stopped. "You fixing it to sell?" one man asked. Eventually, I said. But it wasn't about profit anymore. It was about proof that you could still build something solid from the wreckage of lies. Inside, the floors gleamed. The staircase no longer groaned under weight. And the windows? They let the light in like they'd been waiting for it. Back at the house, Rachel and I still technically shared. The silence had turned cold. We ate separately, slept on opposite sides of a life we'd stopped pretending to share. She worked later. Her makeup got heavier. Her excuses got smoother. One Thursday night, she stood by the door again, suitcase in hand. 3-day conference in Billings, she said. Ethan says it's important. I didn't look up. Give him my best. Her hand paused on the zipper. I don't know what's gotten into you lately. I smiled. Probably the same thing that finally got into you. The door closed behind her with the same soft click I'd heard a dozen times before. But this time, it didn't sting. I didn't watch her leave. Didn't wonder who was waiting for her. Didn't care. I turned back to the workbench in the office, laid out the documents like blueprints. Tucker's notebook, permits signed in a hurry, fake inspection reports stamped like clockwork. Every lie left a mark. You just had to know where to look. One name came up more than any other. Tucker. His initials were like fingerprints in wet cement. He didn't just approve the rot. He was part of the frame. And still, he gave me the notebook. That meant something. He wasn't clean, but maybe, just maybe, he was finally done running. I picked up the thumb drive again, plugged it into the laptop, and backed it all up. Twice. One copy went into a sealed envelope, the other to a cloud server under a new email. If Ethan wanted to play dirty, I'd play smart. No threats, no grand speeches. Just quiet, focused carpentry with the truth. I wasn't a whistleblower. I was a builder, and I was cutting out every beam of rot, one signature at a time. The first wave didn't come with sirens. It came with paperwork. An article hit the front page of the Bozeman Tribune. State investigates alleged permit fraud at Blake & Company. I didn't leak it. Didn't have to. Someone inside the state office lit the match. By noon, 2 of Ethan's ongoing projects had been placed under review. Site managers were being temporarily reassigned. Inspectors called in for clarification. But the real shift? You could feel it in the silence. Phone calls not returned. Texts replied with just, "Can't talk right now." A project coordinator I used to drink with saw me in line at the lumberyard and looked away. They knew. Everyone in Blake's orbit felt the walls move. And then, Rachel came home early. She stood in the living room, still in heels, holding the newspaper like it was a confession letter. "They came to the office," she said, barely above a whisper. "Took everything. Computers, records, even me, for questioning." I didn't ask what she told them. I didn't need to, because guilt doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just stands in your hallway, looking 10 pounds lighter and 5 years older, and finally realizes the house she helped build is about to fall. She stood there, clutching the paper like it could explain everything. "I told them I didn't know," Rachel said, eyes wide, "that I just signed what was put in front of me. I didn't know what Blake was doing." I didn't blink. "But you knew what you were doing," I said quietly. "You just didn't expect the ground to fall out beneath you." She took a shaky step forward. "I panicked, Ben. They said if I cooperated, maybe I wouldn't be charged. I need time to figure this out." I shook my head. "You've had time, years of it. You made your choices. Now you live in the house they built." Her voice cracked. "I didn't mean for this to happen." "That's the thing about consequences," I said. "They don't wait for permission." She sat down slowly on the edge of the couch, like she couldn't hold up the weight anymore. "I miss us," she whispered. "We were good once, weren't we?" I looked at her. We were, before shortcuts became easier than truth. She didn't say anything after that, and I didn't offer comfort. Some endings don't come with screaming, just a quiet you can't come back from. A week later, the final coat of paint dried in the upstairs hallway of the ranch. It was quiet. Sunlight poured through the front windows, soft and golden, like the house was finally exhaling. I walked through it one last time, room by room, touched the banister I'd rebuilt after it was torn down, ran my hand along the walls Sophie helped me sand, paused in the kitchen, where a crooked cabinet used to hang like a reminder of how broken things had become. Now, Everything fit. Every angle was clean. Every board measured and earned. I wasn't proud in the way people usually mean it. I wasn't even happy. I was settled. Outside, the porch looked out onto a street where no one stared anymore. They waved. They slowed their trucks. Some even stopped to ask if I'd take on their remodel next. But I didn't say yes. Not yet. Because this house, this war, was never about business. It was about building something honest after everything else collapsed. Back at the main house, Rachel moved like a shadow. Job gone, name tainted, and no more spotlight to hide behind. I didn't gloat, didn't punish. I just packed up my tools and prepared to move on. The house wasn't even listed yet. I hadn't posted photos, no signs in the yard. I was still deciding whether I'd keep it for Emily and me, maybe rent out the back room, maybe turn the garage into a second workshop. But that afternoon, a black SUV pulled up. Windows tinted, tires too clean for this part of town. A man stepped out, late 50s, blazer, boots that looked worn but expensive. He introduced himself. Name's Charles Whitmore. Heard you're the one who brought this place back from the dead. I raised an eyebrow. From who? He smiled. Let's just say your story travels faster than Instagram. He didn't ask to look around. He walked like he already knew what mattered. In each room, he nodded, touched the trim, tapped the beams. Then we stood on the porch. I'm rebuilding a stretch of historic homes in North Asheville, he said. 12 properties, real craftsmanship work, no frills, no shortcuts. I need someone who builds like this. He handed me a card. I don't hire contractors, he added. I hire builders. And in that moment, I wasn't just the man whose wife cheated. I was a name worth remembering. Jack Morgan, builder. That evening, I sat alone in the living room. Same room that once reeked of spilled paint and shattered glass, where I had swept broken pieces of what used to be trust, and maybe myself. Now, the wood shone with fresh polish. The walls caught the sunset just right, golden, warm, quiet. There was no celebration, no loud victory song, just me, and the sound of peace. I didn't toast. I didn't cry. I just breathed. And for the first time in a long time, the air didn't taste like survival. I thought about everything it took, the betrayal, the nights on a cot, the lies, the fear, the rage, and the hands that built something anyway, not in spite of it, because of it. I didn't rebuild this house to prove something. I rebuilt it to remember that I still had it in me, that I was never what she said I was, that I could rise, quietly, stubbornly, with sawdust in my lungs and truth in my bones. And as the last bit of sunlight slid off the wall, I whispered to myself, This is what healing looks like when you build it by hand. The next afternoon, a black sedan pulled up outside. Didn't recognize the plates. The car was clean, corporate. Guy in his 50s stepped out. Pressed blazer, sharp shoes, calm confidence. He knocked once, then waited. Jack Morgan? He asked, hand extended. Name's Charles Whitmore. I heard you're the man who brought this place back from the dead. I didn't say much, just nodded and showed him around. Room by room he listened. Didn't interrupt, didn't ask stupid questions. He ran his hand along the molding, tapped a beam, smiled. When we stepped back onto the porch, he turned to me. I'm restoring 12 historical homes on the Westbrook estate. Big job, real work, no room for shortcuts, and I need someone who gives a damn. He pulled out a card, sleek, heavy. My project manager said your work felt different, not perfect, but honest, solid. I looked at the card, then at the house, then at him. This your way of saying you want me to build something bigger? He smiled. No, Jack. It's my way of saying it's time the right man started leading something that lasts. He walked back to his car, left me there holding more than a business card. He left me holding possibility. That night, I didn't celebrate, didn't call anyone, didn't pop a bottle. I just sat. In the same living room I once swept shattered glass from, the one that reeked of paint thinner and pain. Now it smelled like fresh pine, soft polish, and peace, not victory, peace. I thought of Lena, of the first time I saw her, her laugh, her ambition, and then the look in her eyes that night at the party, like I wasn't real anymore, like I was just noise in the background. She made her choices, and I made mine. Emily was asleep at her friend's house. Claire had gone home hours ago. She didn't ask for anything, didn't expect. We worked well, quietly. She saw the world in textures and shadows. I saw it in beams and grain. But somehow, we were building something neither of us had words for yet. And maybe, we didn't need to. I looked around the room again. Every corner I had touched. Every scar I had mended. Not just in wood, but in myself. I didn't know what came next. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of finding out. It was just past midnight when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it go. But something, instinct maybe, told me to answer. Jack. Her voice cracked through the line. I didn't know who else to call. Lena. I leaned back in the chair, heart steady. I made a mistake, she said, almost a whisper. I thought Greg loved me. He said we'd start a new life. She sniffled, broken. But the minute the feds showed up, he threw me under the bus. His lawyer told the press I doctored everything, that it was all me. I said nothing. Let the silence do its work. You believe me, don't you? She asked. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just got caught up. Another long pause. Then, I miss us, Jack. I miss who we were. I miss being safe. This time I answered. You don't miss me, Lena. You miss who I was when you still had control. She sobbed. I can change. I exhaled, slowly. I forgave you a long time ago, but forgiveness doesn't mean I'm coming back. A beat of silence. You'd let me go to jail? I didn't put you there. I hung up. I hung. And I slept like a man who knew who he was. Morning broke slow. Sunlight stretched across the ranch floor like it belonged there. Soft, golden, certain. No sirens, no banging on doors. Just the creak of old wood and the sound of a house that had nothing left to hide. I walked room to room barefoot, felt every groove in the floor, ran my fingers across the frame of Sophie's drawing still taped to the hallway wall, a crooked sun, stick figures holding hands, and underneath in her looping 8-year-old scrawl, Dad's Castle. I stopped in the kitchen, made coffee with the last of the good beans. No rush, no noise. I'd finished the final coat of varnish on the cabinets the night before. Soft walnut, strong lines, honest. Claire would stop by later. She had questions about a church renovation downtown. Emily was due home at noon, and Whitmore's office had emailed a contract. No pressure, just, let us know when you're ready. I wasn't in a hurry. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't chasing anything. Not approval, not redemption. The house was done, but I wasn't. I had one more thing to build. And this time, it wouldn't be made of wood. It would be made of choice. They say you can't build a house on broken ground. That rot, once it's underneath you, always finds a way back up. But that's only true if you leave it there. I didn't. I tore it out. Nail by nail. Lie by lie. Rachel's gone. Ethan's empire is unraveling in courtrooms I'll never step into. Tucker's testifying now, his own way of laying down the hammer. The system is bleeding, but it's bleeding out in the sunlight. As for me, the ranch house sold last week, to a young couple with a baby on the way. I left a note in the drawer under the sink. Built honest. May it hold you steady. I signed my name, Ben Carter, not as the man who was betrayed, but the man who built through it. Sophie's staying with me more now. She asks questions I'm finally ready to answer, and when I tuck her in, the quiet no longer feels like punishment. It feels like earned silence. I didn't get revenge, didn't destroy anyone. I just told the truth and built something that could stand up to it. Not a comeback, not a second chance, a foundation. And this time, I'm the one holding